So I'm here with Rich Broderick, and I met Rich um, through my certification for meditation as a meditation instructor. And I noticed Rich because his questions were always insightful, and they would say, "Do you have any questions?" And I never would, Rich. I would never have a question because I was just receiving new information and processing. And then you would ask a question, and I was always elevated. So, A, thank you
Interesting.
for that.
Sure.
And B, I say all of that because this is my getting to really know you. We were part of this class, and, I don't think we know everybody's journeys for sure in our class.
Right.
So the
And
only
I
thing I
found
do
yours kind
know,
of interesting also.
well, thank you. The one thing I know is that this is not new for you. A lot of what we were talking about was really new for me, even though I've always, I've read different books and I've kind of been a seeker. I haven't delved into meditation as a practice except to shut my eyes for 1 or 2 minutes every morning. That was my practice going in. So, welcome to Soulful Connections.
Thank you. And it's
And
really good to be here. I'm really excited about this.
I'm so happy that you're here. So, can we just go back and start? So, I saw that you worked in the automotive industry.
Correct. I spent 30 years in the automotive. Well, I say I spent a 40-year time frame in a 30-year period because
Okay.
I was always there. Like most
Oh,
sales jobs, it's not a 9 to 5 type of
right.
operation. You're there when the customers are there. I was in sales for 10 years, and then 20 years I was in the financial end of it, where I was the guy that took the money. So I was everybody's favorite. Uh,
Right.
so, um, and, that kind of leads the business itself that I was in, the auto business, the car business, is a very stressful. It's very, it's got a very high turnover rate. And so, in looking back at it, I really, really loved my job. I felt like I was very effective at it. Um, and I always like to tell everybody that in the 30 years that I was in the business, I never sold anybody anything. My
I love it.
philosophy was always, um, I'm going to help you through this process. You tell me what your wants and needs are, and we'll see if I can't meet them. If I can't meet them, that's not a problem on my part. It's not because I didn't try. So it did alleviate a lot of the mental stress of the job, having that outlook on it. And that's how I got through it. And I think I was relatively successful. I would say that in the 30 years, I probably touched 30,000 deals over that period of time. And I may be conservative on that, but that would probably be a minimum.
Well, that doesn't feel like it lends itself to meditation, in all honesty. Can you talk about your own journey
Okay.
to where you are today in terms of meditation?
Where I am today or how I got here.
How you got there?
Okay.
Was it that whole time through when you were in the automotive industry? Were you
No,
okay?
no. So we'll go back to 1970. I got out of high school. It was during Vietnam. And I had a couple of options, which, I thought I would take the least painful of all the options. And I enlisted in the Navy because I felt like that would be the least likely branch to send me to Vietnam. And if I didn't enlist, I was worried that I would be drafted because the draft was going on at that time. So I went in the Navy, and of course, as luck would have it, I went directly to Vietnam.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and so that's the downside. The upside is I was in the Navy. and I was stationed aboard an aircraft carrier. And every aircraft carrier in the Navy's fleet in the United States carries an admiral with it. So admirals are very well protected. So the ship that I was on was a very well protected ship. I worked on the flight deck, which was the most dangerous place to work in the Navy, pretty much one of the most dangerous places, I will say, because the planes are taking off and they're landing and that kind of thing. I ended up doing 2 tours of Vietnam, but while I was in the Navy, I did a lot of reading and I read a lot about Eastern religions. I read a lot about Zen. I read the autobiography of a yogi back in that time.
Yeah.
Another influential book was one my mom actually gave me, which was The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. And so I was looking into all that stuff. At that time, the Beatles had gone over to India and they were with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And I looked into that. And when I came back in December of 73, I was being ready to be discharged. And I went to an introductory lecture to Transcendental Meditation. I got out in December of 73. And in January of 73, I was back in Columbus, Ohio, where I was born and raised. And I went to another introductory lecture here. And then I did the course. And I was a student at the time. So I got my mantra, and the rest, they say, is history. I started
Yeah.
meditating twice a day, and I've been over almost 50 years now, pretty consistent with that meditation practice. It's something that it would never leave me.
Yeah.
And I think I might have told this story in one of our classroom meetings that, I was so excited about it. I just thought it was, the best thing since sliced bread. I'm telling all my buddies about it. And, this is something you got to do. It'll calm you down. It's better than smoking pot. It's so good. And after about 2 months of that, they came back and they said, Rich, you need to give it a break. you're just too, we don't want to hear about it anymore. So I pretty much backed off that. And I kind of went into, okay, this is my thing. I'll do it. I'm not going to, if somebody asks me about it, I'll tell them about it, but I'm not going to get too crazy about it.
Yeah. I will say it's interesting because I do find when you talk about things or when anyone talks about things like consciousness and, you know, anything on that level, people don't just dismiss it. They actually kind of get angry. It's a very interesting thing that I've been noticing lately. There are all sorts of different schools of thoughts about a host of things, but there is something about when you talk about when you start delving into, I guess, the philosophies of ancient sages and what is molecular and what are atoms and who are we? People have a visceral response. Have you noticed that?
I have not, but it's I kind of travel. I don't bring it up with so many people
Right,
that I would notice that, and the people that I do bring it up with, that I approach about it, are those people that are somewhat like-minded.
right, right.
Uh,
Same.
so
Um, what was your background leading up to the spiritually? What was your spirit? How were you raised? And that
uh,
I ask you that because Rich, it's so interesting that your mother gave you the prophet. I don't
at
think
at
everybody's mother.
17,
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
my it's funny because my mom always felt like she would make the comment that I was an old soul, and sometimes she would call me Paul because she's like, you're so conservative with the things that you do and the way that you look at things, and she goes, you're just mature beyond your years. Um, and so maybe I was, I don't know. I mean, that was just her perception of me. And that was an interesting book to give me at that time, especially when I look back on it, from this point back. It was such a
Hmm.
significant book to read at that time when I was
Yes.
17 years old.
Yes. I mean, were you the type of family that every Sunday you all got together and you went to mass or church, or did you have a spiritual life as a family?
I was raised Catholic, but my mother, when my brother was born, he was baptized. When I was born, my mom did not have me baptized. She wanted me to be able to choose the religion that I wanted to practice. And at 11 years old, I chose the Catholic religion. I look back at that, and one of the reasons that to this day that I chose that, and I'm still an active participating Catholic, is that the lineage back to Christ. So, I mean, you don't have to agree or disagree with it, but there is a lineage there. Um, and I don't negate what anybody believes. I think that my meditation practice has enhanced my religious affiliation with the Catholic Church. I think it's been, very insightful. When I listen to things, when I do go to church and I listen to the sermons that they give, I think it's enhanced by my meditation practice.
So interesting. First of all, can I just say your mother sounds so interesting to me.
Oh, you have no idea. Her
What
name
was
was
she like?
Rose. Her name was
Rose.
Rose. Well, she went by Rose. Um, I'm not going to tell you what her birth name was, but because she would get mad and she'd be jumping all over me about it. And she has passed, by the way. So,
Okay. Yeah.
but we called her Ramblin' Rose. And my mom worked in the restaurant business, which is a very hard business. She was a waitress. I never saw my mother on Mother's Day. She was always working.
Wow.
And, she, the best, the best story I can tell you is in about 1975, 74 or 75, my mom felt that she had a lump in her breast. And she went to the doctors, and the doctors wanted to do a biopsy. And when she went in for the biopsy, I was in the room with her, and the doctor wanted her to sign a um, a release that would allow them, if it was cancerous, to do a mastectomy. And my mom's response was, "I'm going up with two, and I'm coming back with two." And it was benign, thank God.
I was just going to say, thankfully.
Right. But that just gives you a little insight into, and she would not, it was, there was no, everything was black and white for the most part with my mom. Uh,
Right.
and she was a very strong-willed woman, uh, for, you know, and of course, when I did get married, um, my mom and my mom respected my wife behind her back. When they were together, she could always find an issue here or there, and it was always a tit for tat type of thing. But if anybody ever said anything about Elaine, she would just go off on, she's an awesome decorator, and she's a wonderful wife, she's a wonderful cook, she's everything is,
Yeah.
you know. But oh, my
Well,
mom
she
was,
sounds fascinating because she sounds like she's complex, like all human beings. I mean,
yes, very
that
complex
the
individual.
woman you just described to give you the profit and then you're raised Catholic. I mean, my parents were similar. I was raised Catholic, and um but we always talked about larger life themes, and larger aspects of spirituality. But it is very interesting that she has this kind of toughness, and also she has to have been somewhat reflective.
Yeah. So my dad died when I was 10, and
Mm.
it was that was a bit of an issue because there wasn't anything left. There was no life insurance or anything,
Wow.
and she, would you would ask her, and she was pissed about it. She, a
Yeah.
lot of times she had a chip on her shoulder that, everybody's against me and woe is me, and you know, so she would make the comment that my dad left her with two kids in the United States to raise them in. So that's
So,
who she was. She's
yeah. So, how do you think having lost your dad at 10 shaped you? What impact did that have?
that had a big impact. Um, I was always, in growing up, I was always jealous of other kids that had dads, and see the influence of a male figure in the family. And that probably lent itself to the fact when I did get out of the Navy in it was 1977, I became active in Big Brothers, Big Sisters.
Oh,
And I
nice.
was active in that for 15 years until I had kids. Um, and so I feel very strongly about father figures, and I feel like that's a huge breakdown
Mm.
in the family structure in the country. I mean, you can just see it on a daily basis almost, and it's heart wrenching to me to see that. And I really there's and I just feel strong about a male influence in a boy's life. I just think that's so important, and a girl's life too. She's got to have a dad. Dad's
Yeah.
got to be around there. So
Yeah.
that's just the way I
Yeah.
feel about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's great. That is a really, I love that organization as well. And do your kids practice meditation?
So, and now that brings me to the story of how I got involved with the Chopra organization. Um, my youngest son, um, so both, and the other thing was, Elaine and I tried for a number of years to have kids, and we couldn't have kids. So we ended up having to buy them. And we adopted, Colin was an infant, and um, there's a story behind this. We couldn't have kids, and we looked at in vitro, but back in '92, in the early '90s, it was statistically it just wasn't happening, not anywhere near what it is today.
Right.
And we had talked to a number of people, and we decided that we would try to adopt. So a friend of ours came over, and he said he adopted a child. And he said, basically, you're going to market yourself just the way you would market a car, except now you're going to market yourself. And you're going to get this before the internet. So you're going to get the
Mm-hmm.
RL Polk deal, and you're going to look at every OBGYN in the state of Ohio, and you're going to send them all out basically a resume and promote yourself if they have a child, or a young lady that's looking to for an adoption, that they want to have the child. And so we started telling all our friends that we wanted to adopt. If you hear of anything, let us know. Well, this one gal that we know, she's a hairdresser, and one of her clients came in and said her daughter was pregnant and they were going to give it up for adoption, that she would have the baby. Again, it's a good Catholic family. Abortion was not an option for them. So their attorney got in touch with our attorney, and um, Colin was born October 10th of 1992, and he came home, and this is kind of a funny story, on the 19th. We went to pick him up October 19th, and because they didn't have the home study complete, they had to get that completed. So we ended up going down to the attorney's office, he was going over to the courthouse to get the baby. The mom would sign off on the baby. And we're there at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And he said, I'll go over and then I'll be back with the baby. 9 o'clock comes, 10 o'clock comes, 10:30, there's a call. And the attorney says, we've got a problem. The baby was in a foster care, a private foster care. And the foster parents noticed that it appeared that his feet were clubbed. And my response to that was, well, so what do we do? And the attorney said, you will have a doctor do an evaluation and see what needs to be done. The doctor will give you a report, and then you can decide whether or not you want to move forward with the adoption. I said, well, if Elaine had given birth to this baby, what would be our options then? And he said, well, the baby would be at home. And I'm like, bingo, let's bring the baby home. We'll deal with those feet.
Wow.
Still gets me emotional.
Yeah.
They brought the baby home. His feet were fine. We put him in these, they look like two left feet on each foot. And he had those on for about 6 months. And he was such a fast runner. I wish he would have done track. He could run so fast. And so that's how, so then, I'm meditating every day. Colin is now, 9 years old. And he says to me, Dad, I'd like to meditate with you. So I looked into TM, but TM was so expensive. I thought, I can't really afford to do that right now. And then I looked into other mantra-based meditations, and I'd read some books by Deepak. So I knew about that. So I started researching it. I found that there was a teacher who's lives 2 miles away from me. And so I called her up and I said, my son wants to learn. And she said, oh, okay, no problem. Well, in the meantime, Colin was born. He was 3 years and 3 months old, and he came down with bacterial spinal meningitis. And he was in the hospital for 10 days. He came out of the hospital and he was fine, except for the fact that it wiped his hearing out. So he could not hear at all. Profoundly deaf. So, the doctors said, oh, it might come back. It might come back. So we eventually, the final straw, we took him over to OSU Hospital and had them do an evaluation. And the head of audiology said to me and Elaine that, if you want him to hear, the only option is going to be a cochlear implant. And the guy says, I promise he'll be able to hear a horn honk. He'll be able to hear a train coming, which, for a parent, you just want this from the safety standpoint of it. You want him to be able to be aware of that. So, because I did not want him operated on. I'll be the first to say that. Well, right. When we decided on that, the deaf community came out of the woodwork on, you don't need to do that. He's not broken. He can sign. And I'm like, well, if he needed glasses, I'd put glasses on the kid. If we have this ability, let's do it. So he lost his hearing in January of '96. In December of '96, we had the implant, the surgery done, and then it was turned on in January, almost a year to the day that he lost his hearing, that he became deaf. We had the implant turned on. And during that period of time, he had completely lost his speech because he couldn't modulate. So there was, he was like a wild man around here. We couldn't communicate with him.
Right.
And he eventually, the speech came back. He is probably in the 99th percentile as far as his speech. If you heard him talk, you'd say there's nothing wrong with him. But if you spent time with him, you've got to slow down with him because it still has to process through his brain. And so when Tammy, who's the primordial sound teacher that we went to, she found that she was like, oh, okay, I don't know about this now. And she called Chopra, and Chopra said, this will be fine. You just do the same process. And so he went through the process. He got his mantra. We meditated for about a month. And he said, Dad, this is boring. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm like, that's fine. You've got the information. It's always going to be
Mhm.
there. It's not going anywhere. So if you want it, it's always going to be available to you. And so in the meantime, I started going over and doing group meditations with the primordial sound, and I ended up getting my mantra, and we do group meditations. And then over the years, the group meditations have fallen off until, it was just me and her. And I didn't really feel, 100% comfortable about that. So I said, well, whenever a group is coming, I'll come. And so that's what we've been doing ever since. And
Wow.
so that's how I got my mantra. I know and that's how Colin, and now my other son, Connor, he's got no desire to,
Yes, I do. I understand that. Yep.
so,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
fine, and
Right.
Elaine, she's done the 21-day meditations on occasion, not very often. But here's the thing, and my philosophy on this is that I'm meditating in the house, and if you've got 1%, the Maharishi effect, it does affect everybody else, and things for the
That gives me chills, actually.
yeah, for the most part, things are pretty calm, but you know,
Of
any
course.
family dynamic, there's always issues. I
Of
mean, oh
course.
my God, and when you have
Yeah.
little kids, you got little problems, and now I've got big kids, and I
A
got big.
100%. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that's kind of part of why we're here, to figure that out. And, these,
Right,
our relationships are just, our best teachers.
exactly,
So,
very good, very well put.
yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, I sporadically, my husband will meditate with me. Um, but he's got a small window. I can't force it any longer than so.
Right, and that's fine.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think anything is better than nothing. And like you said, that one person is doing it. I think that there's a power. And I didn't know how powerful it was. I actually knew that meditation was an important part of my life, my approach to life. And what I called meditation was my 1 to 3 minutes, in the morning or at the end of a yoga class in Shavasana. Um, but I couldn't have even articulated why. I thought it was really because I'm not a pauser. I do everything very fast. I have a very East Coast mentality. It's movement and words and more words. And so I thought, okay, well, it gives me a pause, and I do need to pause,
Hmm.
but it is more powerful than that. Um, what about, you talked a lot about the books that you read on the boat. Do you have a book specifically that is really impactful that has served as kind of a guide for you?
Well, the one that I keep pulling out is is the seven spiritual laws of success. Uh,
Yes.
I
Yes.
reference that. Uh, that's by the bedside. So that, you know, certainly the Bible is a good,
Yeah.
and I've read so many of the Chopra books. Um,
Yeah.
I can't say that there's one that. I mean, I just love reading. I do a lot of audiobooks now because it seems like I can get through a lot more books. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about one, I think it was like two people. Oh, it was Deepak Chopra and maybe his brother or something.
It's
And
that
that was,
book. I looked that up after that class, and it's called Brotherhood. And his brother is a really interesting guy, but it also gives you some great insight into Deepak and him going through the TM movement and what he went through and how Maharishi really wanted him to take it over.
oh,
Uh,
interesting.
yeah, and he just he didn't feel right about it, and I don't know what it doesn't go into any detail why he didn't, but it might be a good book to revisit. Um,
Yeah.
that one and the other one that I think is a good book to get insight into the TM movement is Thoughts from, oh, I'm going to forget the name of it now. But it's about this girl who was raised in Fairfield, Iowa, which is where Maharishi International University is located. It's a real good book, and she's an actual writer, and the experiences that she's had, and especially in doing some of the advanced techniques, which the Chopra organization does. You can get the same ones through the Chopra organization also. Uh,
Hmm.
Actually, I don't know how they're going to do it now because they're not. It was through Seduction of Spirit, which was their premier retreat that they did, and I went on that one a couple of times, and that was
Right.
a good one.
So how would you say, what is the importance of meditation in your life? Like, who would you be without it? Or who, maybe you don't even know that, but who are you with it? How has it impacted you? Why do you continue to do it?
Well, I think the most insightful thing I can say about that is I don't do it for the meditation. I do it for the effect that it has on the outside and my relationship with everybody else, and how I think it's opened my mind to listen. Number one is to listen to others, and I mean, when I'm listening to someone, I believe in what they are saying to me. I don't necessarily, I'll take it in, I'll do my own evaluation on it. And then if I believe that, it's positive, I'll go with it. If I don't, if I think it's negative, I'm going to just let it go. Just kind of like the thoughts during meditation, you just let them go.
Love it.
And I mean, I can't imagine not having a day without it.
Yeah.
I know there's to listen to some people, they interview people who do meditation, and one of the ones that I listened to was Jerry Seinfeld, and he's a real active. He's very active in doing TM,
Yes.
and he made the comment that for years he just would meditate in the mornings. He just never felt the need, and then he got talking to one of the teachers, guy by the name of Bob Roth, who's a very well-known TM teacher. And the description was, doing a meditation in the morning and not doing one in the night is like treading water. You're staying afloat, but you're really not getting anywhere. So you really need to do
Interesting.
that second meditation. That second meditation is really going to help you, and it's really kind of a lift if you do it and I typically will do it between 4 and 7 in the evening. Try and get it in the early afternoon if I can. Uh, but it makes a difference. It does make a difference.
Yeah.
So it's something you want to do. You want to make sure that you do it twice a day.
Yeah. What about, I've been thinking a lot about purpose. I've been thinking a lot about what my purpose is. And I've been talking about it with a lot of people. Do you think about that? Do you have any kind of thoughts about your own purpose, your own mission, so to speak?
Um, so yeah, and when I was reading over your the questions, um, the the purpose, my purpose, and I think on a very very base level, is to help others.
Yeah.
And there, in I'll never forget this. In 1979, I went to a success. It was called a success seminar, is what it was called, and it was all these people who were motivational speakers. And the last motivational speaker in 1979 was a guy by the name of Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar has a signature um, saying that he always said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll be financially taken care of. And, I was, in my 20s, 26 years old. And I'm like, man, that I just couldn't get my head around that. And after the seminar, they had a meet and greet, and I got to meet him. And I said, I just, can you just elaborate on that? And he said, I don't care what kind of work you do. I don't care what most of the people that were there were either insurance salespeople or financial planners, or, there were people in the car business that were there. He said, if you help somebody get what they want, even if it's not related to what you do, I promise you, overall, you're going to be financially taken care of. And that's something that's always kind of stuck with me, and how I made it through the car business for 30 years without, imploding and, getting burnt out. Um, I'll never forget. I went back and told my boss, I'm not going to sell cars. I'm just going to help people get what they want. And he said, Rich, you'll be looking for a job in 3 months. 3 months later, I was salesman of the month, and I never looked back in the car business.
I love
So
it.
it's just a very basic, I'm here to help.
It
And
makes total sense.
I've been financially taken care of.
It actually does make total sense on many different levels, actually. I really love that. Um, I love to ask people what is probably a hard question. And if you answer just instinctively, my question is always, what change, if you could make a change in the world, what change would you make? If somebody said, here, Rich, you have a magic wand, but you only have it for the next minute, what would you do with it?
I would probably want people to listen with an open mind. Just listen with an open mind. You know, my way is not the only way. And, in your way is, there are many paths to get to where we want to get to. Um, and you just have to listen. Listen, you can gain so much. I would wish that on, you know, and especially now. I mean, it just seems everybody's so divided, and I don't have a problem respectfully listening to other people. It always, I mean, if there's anything that gets me upset about that, is that when I express a view, I'm not expressing it to you personally. I'm expressing it to you as a view. If you come back to me because of my view and you make it personal, that's I I find that disturbing.
I agree.
I can't get through that. And so if I shut people down and I don't want to be around them, it's because they're making everything personal, and it's
Yeah.
not personal, you know.
Right. I mean, and everything doesn't have to be an argument, it can be, and that's when it starts to get personal. It really can be an expression. We can't really change things unless we discuss them. And oftentimes, even on this podcast, I will be talking about something that I feel ill-equipped to discuss. You know, I'm not a therapist or an expert in anything. And sometimes I'm quite aware that I'm responding with awkwardness, or maybe I'm going to say the wrong thing. But I think if we're not willing to do that and to kind of give each other a little mercy,
Yeah.
I don't know how we kind of go forward, you
Right.
know?
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
really love that. I really love
Yeah.
that.
I'm in an organization, and I was active in it for a while, and I've not been active, but I still get their emails and everything, called Braver Angels. And Braver Angels tries to bring um, Democrats and Republicans together.
Oh,
And
nice.
every interaction that I've had has always been, man, this is a really nice person. I've never
Yeah,
I've never come away from it where I've interacted with anybody in the organization, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, that I've felt, I mean, they're human, and they've got, the wants and needs like we all have.
I love
And
that.
there's not really a big, I mean, on that level,
Right,
it's like it's only in the upper levels where we actually get in it.
right.
So we can't have
Yeah,
that.
I love
Anyway,
it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so
you're welcome.
much.
You're welcome. You're
Did
welcome.
I miss anything, Rich, that you were like, I really want to get this point across? Did I miss anything?
Um, no, I don't think. I'm just kind of, oh, what do you do when you lack motivation?
Yeah, what do you do when you lack motivation?
I
I'm
don't know.
always curious about that.
Yeah. There are days you get out of bed and, I should go to the gym, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to just hit the snooze.
100%. So what do you do on those days?
Well, you just take it a little slower, I guess.
Yeah.
Just take it a little slower. Um, you have days, and the more you meditate, it's like one of the analogies. I mean, as far as the motivation goes, you sometimes you come out of a meditation and it's like there were so many thoughts, many thoughts, and you can't seem to let them go and get back to the mantra.
Yes.
That's kind of a day where I sometimes feel like I don't have the motivation to do anything. And then there's days you get up and it's like, okay, I know exactly what I need to do mentally. I've got it all in my mind, and bam, 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 you get it done, and you're done by noon.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes think that we almost have to be gentle with ourselves and go, this is one of those days
Yeah,
where I'm just
good
gonna, like
point.
you said, take it slower.
Yeah, yeah. So, um,
Yep. Yeah.
I like this one. What do people get wrong about you?
Oh, yeah.
And I
Some
read,
people hate this question, Rich. I've almost started not asking that because some people really do hate it. So you're okay with that
well,
question?
well, I'm surprised because, when I read through questions, it will trigger something that somebody said to me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's interesting. And so when we were I had to go to a funeral, and it was one of Elaine's cousins who's friends with me on Facebook. And she made the comment to me that she said, you know, when I read what you write on Facebook and then I see you, it, it, I, they don't match up. And I was like, well, I don't know. It just, what do they get wrong about me? I mean, can I be that person? Can I express those feelings that, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a touchy feely guy, but I would say that I certainly am in touch with my emotions and how I feel about things. I feel strongly about, the love that I have for my wife. the love that I have for my family, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'll
Right.
express it. So I think sometimes people, when they one guy said to me in the car business, I said, "Well, when you see me, what do you see?" And he goes, "You remind me of a high school science teacher." Okay, all right, I'll go with that. High
Right.
school
So
science
maybe
teacher.
they think you're more reserved than you actually are.
Oh yeah, yeah, maybe they
Yeah.
do. Uh,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that, yeah. So what we get wrong about me? I think we can't look at another individual and make a judgment. And I
No.
think some people will look at me and they'll make a judgment, and then when they start talking to me, it's like, ooh, wait a minute, that doesn't make
That, yeah.
that's not fitting. So
Which is one of the things I actually really love about people. That's one of my favorite things, because people are, we're all onions. You
right,
peel away the layers and we're still
right,
figuring.
yeah,
I think, I hope that as long as we're alive in a physical sense, we're always discovering layers and
yeah.
yeah.
So let me ask you, what trait do you deplore in others?
Yeah. Do you want to ask me? Do you want to tell me?
Yeah, yeah,
So, oh, what trait do I deplore? I deplore uh any kind of intense bias. I am very, since I was little, racism. It's just it's something I abhor. It doesn't make sense intellectually, first of all. Forgetting the morality of it, I have an intellectual aversion to it. And then secondly, I do have a moral stance about it. It
yeah,
it goes against my grain in a big way, and I do deplore it. What
yeah.
about you?
Similar. I don't, you can't again judge a book by the cover.
Right,
It's not fair.
right.
Certainly not fair. Um, I, and I also get a little upset with people who want to perpetuate a stereotype
Yeah,
with sometimes within themselves. They'll project
yeah.
it, and that's kind of disturbing also. I won't say I deplore it. I can't say that there's. Um, I mean,
That
I,
is a strong word.
yeah, I can pretty much see the beauty in just about everybody. I mean, because I think everybody they're born with a kind heart. You know,
Right. Yeah, a
so
baby, yeah, yeah. And actually, I mean, I do deplore it. So my reaction has to be tempered because I've learned and I'm still learning that I can't meet that with the level of animosity at which it, is put forth. So that's me just growing and learning because, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody on another podcast who she finds out people's essences. And she said, one of my essences is kindness. And I said, here's the weird thing about it. When somebody is unkind, I'm so mean. Because when I experience unkindness, I'm not kind. So it's so interesting. I have such a,
I think
um,
do you view yourself as being mean or being defensive?
I don't know. When I see somebody being unkind, I've seen a lot of it, and in past years, we've seen much more of it politically because I think there's always been unkindness politically since the days of our country's formation. We just didn't
Sure.
have Facebook back then. I mean, I think people actually tried to kill each other. There's a level of unkindness and animosity, but because I was not fully understanding that level when I started to see it, it evoked something in me that I was almost matching it with unkindness. Really, when I look at it honestly. So I've had to learn not to do that. And I'm still learning, you know.
right?
I want to be that kind of like warrior that goes in there and goes, I'm going to defend
Yeah,
whatever.
that's what I meant.
Yes.
I'm not going to get mean about it. I'm just going to defend. Wait a
Right.
minute. That's not. You're not being. If you're being mean, you're not being fair because there's no
Right.
need to be mean to somebody else. I mean, it's just not
Exactly.
mean at all.
Exactly. I think I get aggressive and I'm just trying to temper that aggression. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But it's a learning. What trait do you love in others? What trait is something that it just draws you to somebody?
Um, the trait that I probably openness. People that are open. I mean, and you can. I think with going with your gut, you can pretty much feel when someone's going to be open with you. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think this has been it's been accentuated. I think in the past maybe year that we're coming out of this pandemic, where I've been interacting so much with people who on Facebook or social media, and one individual who I had met over the years on occasion, and and so we were friends, became friends on Facebook. Not Didn't really know her that well, and it stood out when we have a Memorial Day parade in the community that I'm in, and she was walking down the street, and I was walking in the opposite direction, and she looked over at me and she just said, "Could I have a hug?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, I love hugs. I would love to give you a hug." And she said, I just, from being on Facebook with you, I just feel like I need a hug." And she said, I just want the energy."
Oh, I love it. That's so nice. That says a lot.
Yeah, I thought
Um,
that was really sweet. And,
that is really cool.
in
That's the
doing
great part of Facebook.
right, in doing my teacher training, then uh, I got a number of people together. We had like 7 or 8 people to do a presentation, and some of those people were, one lady just deals. She does very heavily into um, looking at auras,
Yeah.
and afterwards she goes, "Oh my God, there's just so much blue around you." And I don't know the significance of blue, but there's just so much blue around
Yeah.
you. So
That's so interesting because that's such a,
yeah.
when we talk about what do people get wrong about you, then she's looking at it in a whole different way, you
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's been some interesting experiences for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I love it.
I'm really looking forward. I still have to do and I'm very scared about doing my videos. I haven't. Everything is done except for my videos. I've got to do the videos, and it's like the last thing that I have to
You know
do.
what? Don't be scared because you're the best out of all of us.
Oh, I don't know
So
about that. I
it's
don't know about that.
true. Don't be scared. I mean, I am a plunger. I just plunge and I think whatever you think, it's
Right.
just, you know, and really and truly, the worst part of the videos is the anticipation of the videos.
Yeah.
It's really the worst part. I just hit Zoom and hit record, and did it via Zoom, and then I just, paused, went and, you know, I just went forward. And I just know with your knowledge, believe me, Rich, don't think twice about it. Just do it.
I
Do it
know.
today.
I know. And that the
You'll
Shanti
feel better.
the Shanti mantra is always. I'm still learning it.
Well, you
I
know
still
what?
listen to it. It's on a loop on my phone.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's what somebody had said to do that. And that's what I did. And, and yeah, that really helped me. that, and I did it every morning when I meditated. I actually started with the Shanti mantra that way.
Oh,
It was
that's a
just
good
like,
idea.
yeah, that's what I did. Whenever I would meditate, I actually listened to it, said it, it just became part of my whole practice.
So now going forward with your practice, and you're in Florida, right?
No, I'm in Pennsylvania
Oh, okay. Why did I think you were in Florida?
now.
Um, anyway, so but going forward with your practice, um, are because you're into some other things like yoga or something. You've got a yoga class.
Yeah, yeah. So really, when I got this meditate, when I wanted to get the meditation certification, it was mostly I was chief operating officer of the Chamber of Commerce
Oh,
in
nice.
our county. But I really had this vision that I wanted to do this podcast, and I had started doing it, and I created during the pandemic this website called Soulful Living, because what I really get excited by is helping people build businesses that are in line with their purpose. It's my favorite things. Or
Nice.
somebody says, I want to write a book. I want to do my own podcast. I want to, um, whatever it is. I love it when it's kind of in line with their purpose. So I was like, that's where I want to help people build their own life that they're like, not, I wish I could, or someday I will, but just do it. So I thought I should get a certification so I can say Amanda is certified in. And I would randomly look at different certifications and nothing really,
Oh,
And then
really?
I was doing something with Deepak Chopra just for myself. And I was like, oh, now Deepak Chopra, I like him. And I thought, I wonder if he does any kind of certification. So I went online and I thought, well, I'm never going to tell somebody how to be nutritious, because when I get off of here, Rich, I'm probably going to have a biscotti and a coffee. I don't know, you know. how. And then I thought, meditation. Well, I wrote my own little, I had a health crisis with one of my kids. And when it was kind of a little calmer, I wrote a lot of thoughts I had about that. And one of the thoughts was, you need to meditate. Whomever you are, you need to meditate. And I really, looking back, don't even know why. I don't have the words to explain it. It's the weirdest thing, because I usually have words to explain everything, but I don't have words to describe this. It was
Interesting.
just a thought. And so I thought, oh, I will get a certification, but I'm not going to be a person that actually does it. I don't have the time for that. And PS, what are they even going to tell me? Because they're just going to tell me to sit down and shut my eyes. What else is there to say? And then, Rich, when they started talking about primordial sound, which I had no idea what that was, I thought, oh, they're telling me to shut up? Are you kidding me? I can't shut up, and I can't even not listen to something. And then I found myself really annoyed by it. I was like, well, that's ridiculous.
Really?
It was such a journey, because I was really annoyed that it was silent. And then I went through a phase where I went, oh, if I'm annoyed by that, I must really need it. If, and
Interesting.
so then I went through that phase, and then, it just kept on escalating throughout this whole thing. And that's why oftentimes I would just sit there listening, because I was like, I've got nothing to contribute here, because I'm so just taking this in, until, I kind of kept changing. I just kept changing all the way through. So where I'm at now is, wow, by the way, when I would meditate, even before this, I would say, I always end it with a prayer. I was raised Catholic myself, and I have a little meditation area, and then I always pray at the very end of it. And I would always pray, because I'd been in my job for 30 years. And I was like, I want to move. I'm done. I feel done, but I don't quite know how to move. But I need to move. I want to do this. But how am I going to do that? So I would just pray and then I would meditate. And then my meditation got deeper through this experience. And then one day in November, um, we had a new CEO and she walked in and she let everybody except for one person go at the chamber. And I was one of those people. And as they were talking, I was like, this is that. This is it felt very right. It felt, I wasn't upset. I was surrounded by people who were upset, but I wasn't.
You know what that's called?
What is that called?
Synchronicity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
It's so,
It happened at
yeah.
a time when it was supposed to happen, and everything
It's
up to that point led to that point.
I feel that so much. And it's weird because I actually then thought, well, this is powerful. And I wrote out my intentions on an index card. And as I was doing this, so I'm now living my best life. I'm connecting with people and having meetings, and it's all kind of flowing and gelling. And it's starting to, and then I felt so bad because my husband, who was working for a plumber, would leave the house at 4:30 in the morning. He's exhausted. He's 57. And I was like, how can he maintain this? He's going out and standing in a ditch. And I wrote, help my husband kind of achieve his dreams. So mid January, he comes in because you're not going to believe this. They just let me go. And I go, oh my gosh. So I said, Victor, I feel like that's right. And he is he is, um, he was raised in a really tough neighborhood. It was a crack neighborhood in North Philadelphia. He's Puerto Rican, one of 18. His mother and father had 18 kids,
Oh my gosh,
and very loving family, lots of them, but it was a
Catholics.
rough, yeah, it's right. So, and he's always watched my little things I do, but he's not really jumping in with both feet. And he said, yeah, I feel like it's right too. And he just started his own plumbing business and it's going really well. So it's all
Love it.
me just not having the full words for it all, it's all just,
It's so synchronistic. It is
yeah.
that, and so going forward, one of the things I want to do is I want to do a weekly group meditation with those people who I have, who will do the training, regardless of who
Yes.
it is, and just come over. And then I'd like to have a theme for each one of those. And one of the big things is synchronicity. What is it?
I love it.
How does it happen? Is it, and when I was reading and going through this class, and you don't think about the higher states of consciousness, and then you start reading them, and then you start seeing, well, you know what, I can see bits and pieces of those higher states, uh, it's just a level of awareness. The more you
Yes.
meditate, the more you become aware of these little things that are happening in your life, and they're really happening every day. I was thinking about somebody the other day, and then the next day they call me. How
Yeah.
does that? Those are the kind of things that
Yeah.
are going on all the time. And I mean, that is such a great example of, a combination of, here it is. Can you contribute to him? Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. That is so
Yeah.
freaking awesome. I love it. Love that.
It's just so many things. And it's interesting because I've started to think, well, when I've had to, it's interesting that I did get that book, that Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire, and I just started reading it that you talked about. And, you know, upstairs as we speak is one of my daughters, my middle daughter. And I was told, long story, but she couldn't survive because of blah, blah. It was such a long story, but just the way her anatomy, essentially, her inner anatomy. And, I was like, okay, she's going to survive. They make movies about the one person who survives. Why? I would say to the doctors, I watch movies. If I watch a movie about so and so, why can't that be my daughter? Why can't she be the star?
Right.
And, you know, so I think back to different events and I think, yeah, when there's kind of a purity of intention, there is something that happens. And I read during the time I was in the hospital, I lived in Children's Hospital for 5 months in intensive care with my daughter. And I read autobiography of a yogi, just happened to be in my stack, you know. And one of the two things struck me in that book. One is he would make himself well and then make himself sick and make himself well. And I thought, all right, okay, you've just taught me something,
He's
right?
absorbing the sickness of others.
Yes, yes. And I thought, then if that's possible, my daughter, we can do this. And then the other thing that struck me that I loved is he said something about, I'm not audacious enough to understand God. I'm not. And I thought, because I would always wonder, I'm asking for the life of my daughter and I'm in intensive care and children are dying all around me. And I'm asking for my daughter's life. How intellectually does that make sense? And how is this going to be fulfilled? So I surrendered the intellectual aspect of that. And I thought, I can't wonder that. That's not actually helpful. Because I was even reading books about the Holocaust, which is not what you want to read when you're in intensive care with your child, but it was on my book list. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, how is my prayer going to be answered? I'm sure every Jewish person in a concentration camp was praying. Why didn't God answer their prayer? So like these are my intellectual thoughts, but I kept returning to, well, I don't get it. And I can't. Sometimes what I'm learning is my intellect gets in the way and I have to surrender that. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you have your intentions,
Yeah.
and when we pray, we're basically praying and we're requesting something. When we meditate, when you meditate, that's where you're talking to God. When you meditate, now you're going to allow God to talk to you.
Yeah.
That's how I view it.
I agree.
And you just you have to take it in, and then you know the talking is being done, but you don't have any realization of the talking until after you're done meditating.
Yep.
You
I
get to
love
be
it.
in this gap for a little bit, and you allow it to come in, and then you come out, and regardless of what happens, I mean, obviously the Holocaust was horrible, horrible,
Right.
horrible.
Right.
uh, not anything that we had any control over.
Right.
You and it may be that I'm a I'm a result of it. You know,
Right.
uh, Yogananda died in April of 1952. That's when he had what samadhi, where his he was in the just finished a speech. Well, you read the book. I mean, I don't have to tell
No, I didn't read. I actually only read half of the book.
you.
Once
Okay.
I felt like, so I still have it upstairs.
Okay. So he was at the end of a speech, and he just let his body go. And he collapsed at the
Wow.
end of the speech and left his body. Basically, is what he did. You know,
Wow.
and that was the first thing that I looked at when I got out of the Navy. Was I looked at the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is what Yogananda started in
Yeah.
California. That's a fascinating story. Another book that I read when I was in my teen years and I was in Vietnam. It was the first time I read it. The only book that was on Steve Jobs' phone when he died.
How interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fascinating that would
Yeah.
be. Anyway,
Who knows what he would have been like?
yeah.
Well, I have to say, I'm going to go meet somebody who wants to actually start an artist thing. But So I really want to, I'm still figuring it all out, but maybe there's a way that somehow you could lead something through what I do with soulful living. So we'll have to stay connected,
Yeah.
Rich.
So
I
let
would
me
love
ask
that.
this as
Yeah,
a parting question.
sure.
Who was the interviewer and who was the interviewee?
You're good.
I love it. It
Yeah.
was so
Well,
great talking with you.
and maybe part of what you do could be a podcast. It's so easy.
So you say.
It's so easy. I am not technical. I'm telling you. I think what I'm going to do one of these days is have a group where everybody comes on and I show them how to do a podcast because it couldn't be easier. And there are so many messages that need to get out and so many ways to share that messages, and people resonate with different people. So I
Right.
think there can't be enough. And I might just say, hey, everybody who wants to learn, come on. I'm going to just show
Yeah.
you. I'm not an expert and there are much better ways to do it, but I can get it where you hit record and have something to share, you know?
Right. Right.
So,
Well, I'll be glad to sit in on that class.
okay. Sounds good.
Well, so
Thank you
great. This has
so
been
much.
awesome. All right.
I
You're welcome.
agree. I appreciate it. I'll let you know when this is going to air. It's going to be a couple of weeks because I kind of have like a little bit of a backlog. I
Okay.
don't mean a backlog in a bad way. I like having that because that way I'm not chasing. I do it
Sure.
every Tuesday. So
Right.
thank you so
Keep me posted.
much.
You're welcome. That's,
I
hey,
will.
thank you. I got as much
My
out of it
pleasure.
too.
My
All right.
pleasure. Thanks again.
Uh-huh. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.